Perlakuan diskriminatif pemerintah Myanmar terhadap etnis Rohingya masih terus terjadi. Organisasi pemantau hak asasi manusia Amnesty International dalam laporannya menyebutkan pemerintah Myanmar masih membatasi etnis Rohingya untuk bepergian, mendatangi rumah sakit dan mendapatkan akses terhadap pendidikan. Bahkan tindakan pemerintah Myanmar digolong sebagai tindakan apartheid. Sementara itu pemerintah Indonesia tidak tinggal diam dalam merespons situasi di negara bagian Rakhine. Beberapa kali pemerintah mengirimkan bantuan dan utusan untuk mencari solusi. Lalu apa saja temuan lengkap yang terakhir Amnesty International dan mampukah Indonesia berperan banyak dalam mengatasi krisis Rohingya? Kita akan bahas dalam Insight kali ini bersama saya, Desi Anwar. Ya, penderitaan warga Rohingya masih menjadi sorotan dunia. Bertahun-tahun mereka hidup sebagai kaum tertindas dan hak asasinya dirampas. Mereka bertahan dalam gelombang pemerkosaan, pembunuhan, penyiksaan hingga pembakaran terhadap pemukimannya. Kesulitan hidup Rohingya tak sampai di situ saja. Tim investigasi dari Amnesty International melaporkan adanya pola diskriminasi yang sistematis yang menimpa warga Rohingya. Pada tanggal 15 September tahun 2017 ini, tim Amnesty International menemukan bukti baru terkait pembakaran berskala besar di bagian utara Rakhine, daerah yang didiami warga Rohingya. 80 lokasi yang berpenduduk padat dibakar oleh pasukan keamanan dan massa, dan pembakaran memaksa lebih dari 370.000 warga Rohingya di Rakhine mengungsi ke Bangladesh dan negara bagian lainnya sejak tanggal 25 Agustus lalu. Sementara menurut analisis citra satelit dan foto lapangan, pembakaran serta serangan lainnya terhadap Rohingya dilakukan secara sengaja dan sistematis. Selanjutnya pada tanggal 18 Oktober tahun ini, Amnesty International mengungkap bahwa militer Myanmar telah membunuh ratusan warga Rohingya, perempuan maupun laki-laki, bahkan anak-anak. Berdasarkan lebih dari 160 wawancara yang dilakukan, pasukan keamanan Myanmar juga memperkosa dan melakukan aksi kekerasan seksual terhadap kaum perempuan Rohingya. Gelombang penyiksaan ini menyebabkan sedikitnya 520.000 warga Rohingya terpaksa melarikan diri ke Bangladesh. Pada tanggal 21 November masih tahun 2017 dalam laporan Caged Without a Roof, akses kesehatan di seluruh negara bagian Rakhine dinyatakan sangat buruk. Hanya 5 petugas kesehatan per 10.000 orang yang bertugas di wilayah ini. Sementara warga Rohingya juga dilarang melakukan perjalanan ke pusat kota sejak tahun 2012. Mereka hanya boleh melakukan perjalanan ke desa-desa Muslim lainnya. Selain itu, Amnesty International juga melaporkan bahwa etnis minoritas telah dipersulit mengurus dokumen kependudukan di kantor imigrasi. Sementara rekomendasi dari Ketua Komisi Hak Asasi Manusia Rakhine, yaitu Kofi Annan, diharapkan segera diimplementasikan. Rekomendasi ini diyakini akan mengurangi penderitaan warga Rohingya, dan isi rekomendasi Kofi Annan antara lain meliput percepatan verifikasi kewarganegaraan Rohingya sesuai Undang-Undang Kewarganegaraan tahun 1982, serta imbauan kepada pemerintah Myanmar agar menjamin kebebasan gerak setiap orang terlepas dari agama, etnis, ataupun status kewarganegaraan. Dan seruan untuk pemerintah Myanmar agar memastikan kondisi Rohingya di kamp pengungsian aman dan bermartabat. Pemerintah Myanmar pun menawarkan sejumlah solusi untuk meredam krisis yang melanda negaranya. Otoritas Myanmar dan Bangladesh sepakat untuk memulangkan ratusan ribu pengungsi Rohingya kembali ke Myanmar. Arus keluar pengungsi ke Bangladesh akan dihentikan, tetapi dengan persyaratan bahwa pengungsi benar-benar berasal dari Rakhine. Dan pemerintah Myanmar juga setuju untuk memulihkan stabilitas keamanan di Rakhine. Ya, kita akan lanjutkan Insight bersama salah seorang anggota tim investigasi Amnesty International. Sesaat lagi, tetaplah bersama Insight. Iya, masih dalam Insight. Organisasi pemantau hak asasi manusia atau Amnesty International telah merilis laporan investigasi atas krisis kemanusiaan di Myanmar. Dan dalam rilisnya, Amnesty International memerinci bagaimana praktik persekusi selama bertahun-tahun yang telah memicu krisis di Rakhine State. Selain itu, sekitar 620.000 pengungsi Rohingya kabur ke Bangladesh sejak konflik kembali pecah pada bulan Agustus lalu. Nah, lalu apa-apa saja temuan selengkapnya akan kita bahas bersama anggota tim investigasi Amnesty International yang sudah bergabung bersama saya di studio, Elise Tillet. Hi Elise, it's good to have you here. Thank you for joining us, and you are part of the team in Amnesty International that did a whole research and produced this, wow, hefty 111 pages on the report about what's happening in Rakhine State, the Rohingyas. Caged without a roof, apartheid in Myanmar's Rakhine State. And we know that that part of Myanmar is very difficult to get to. Tell us a little bit about the report. I mean, it's very long, very comprehensive. How long did it take you and your team, and what did you have to do in order to get access? Who did you talk to, and who did you talk with, and until basically you came up with such a comprehensive finding?
So first, thank you for having me to be able to talk about this report. It's the result of a 2 years investigation. For this research, we did go to Rakhine State 4 times. We also interviewed more than 200 people from different ethnic groups, from different religion, and from different areas within Rakhine State, people who live in villages, people who live in displacement camps. We also interviewed a member of the state security forces, a member of the township authorities, United Nations working on the ground, humanitarian organization working on the ground. And we also went to Naypyidaw, the capital of Myanmar, to meet with some of the ministries to ask them about our findings and what they were doing about the situation. So it is a long report, but it's because it's also serious findings that we have. And
of course, it's something that the world needs. I mean, what's been happening in Myanmar and the persecution of the Rohingyas, it's been going on for so many years, and there doesn't seem to be very much sort of development because of it. Let me just ask you, sort of, how did Amnesty International manage to get in and get permission to interview people, and then would you say that what the work that you've done there is an accurate portrait and exactly what was happening in that part of Myanmar?
Well, yes, it is, and this is why we extensively interviewed a number of people from different communities to get really an accurate picture. It is really difficult to get access to Rakhine State. When you arrive at the airport in the main city, there is a sign at the entrance that clearly says that foreigners need authorization to be able to go to the townships where most of the Rohingya live, to their villages, or to the displacement camp. We approached the local authorities and asked for the authorization to be able to conduct our investigation.
And they were quite open
independently, and they let us go. But bear in mind, this was before the latest attacks, and I think since the access has been even more restricted, we know that no humanitarian organization can operate anymore. So this was before the latest crisis.
And the people you interviewed, particularly the victims, the eyewitnesses, so to speak, how did you find them? I mean, what sort of criteria did you sort of use to pick people that obviously representatives of the people living there? I mean, and were they quite willing to talk, or did they need to be persuaded? Were they scared, or?
So we don't use criteria to choose the people we talk to. We just, go into the villages and start interviewing people.
They're just at random.
Yeah, exactly. And the only effort we make is try to speak to women as well as men, and, a different range of age. People are scared to speak, but there's good reasons for it. There are real risk for reprisals for whoever speaks to the international community. I interviewed a person myself who was detained for 2 weeks for the border guard police. During those 2 weeks, he was tortured, and he was only released after paying a really big fine to them. And the reason he was arrested in the first place is because he was suspected of, sharing information with the international community and with some Rohingya bloggers. So the fears is real, and the repercussions are important. So we have to be very careful. So they're actually also
taking risk in talking to
Absolutely, and we're so thankful for anyone from all communities who share their story with Amnesty, because we know the risks they've been taking. So
and let's hope they're safe, and let's hope there's no repercussion from their testimony, so to speak. But so what did you find? What did they say? What's the real situation they're like, and how much are the Rohingyas suffering?
What we found is that every aspect of their life has been restricted, and you mentioned earlier it's been decades of persecution of the Rohingya, but what we found is that since 2012, after violence spread across Rakhine State, these restrictions have really intensified. And when I say every aspect of their life, is restriction on their movement, on their access to healthcare, to education.
Tell me a little bit more about what is it like? I mean, what sort of, do they get any healthcare at all? Are the children, are they schooled? Or, what is daily life like?
Well, daily life is some Rohingya in some areas are confined to their villages. In some places I went, they cannot use the roads. They can only travel through the waterways, and only to go to Muslim villages. They've been literally banned from the main towns. One place where I went, we had to be on a small canoe for 40 minutes to be able to reach that village. And we could only be there between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. because it's guarded by police. There is a road that goes to that village. They just cannot use it.
What, the police or the authorities check them and ask them for their papers or stop them? I mean, how are they treated, especially when it comes to dealing with the authorities?
Yeah, there are checkpoints throughout Rakhine State, and each time they cross the checkpoints, they are at risk of harassment, of threats, of extortion, and in some cases arrest. One of my colleagues, she witnessed herself a man being beaten up by the border guard police at one of those checkpoints. I talked to a dad who his 15-year-old daughter had just been arrested. The only reason why is because she went through a checkpoint without, the special authorization that is required for the Rohingya to travel. And because he cannot go to the town, he hasn't been able to see her. He doesn't know what she's been charged with, and, she's 15 years old.
But how many people are actually living there now? I mean, we know that quite a lot of them have sort of, basically had to leave and cross the border to Bangladesh. I mean, how many people are we talking about now that in that state, in that part of Rakhine?
Well, it's really difficult to have actually accurate population estimates of the Rohingya because the Myanmar authorities excluded them 2 years ago from the national census.
So there is no record of it. I mean, they said an estimate of 1 million of Rohingyas, but there's no accurate...
There is no accurate population data. What we know is that more than 600,000 have fled in the past 3 months, but because no one has effective access to the area that was affected by the violence, it's really difficult to know how many are left in those areas. There are still people, hundreds of thousands, we think, that are living in, the more central part of Rakhine State. And these people, they are still living under the system of apartheid that we are describing in this report.
Okay, and the children, access to health, education, and the humanitarian help that has been supposedly sent there. I mean, are they taking part in any of this? I mean, can they actually live day to day and eat enough food?
Well, the UN has reported a really high level of malnutrition in Rakhine State, and especially among the children in terms of education, what we found is that Rohingya children do not have access to government schools anymore. And that's because they're prevented to go to school with, other ethnic groups, or because the teachers refuse to go to Muslim villages.
Oh.
Healthcare is the same story because they cannot go to the main towns, they cannot go to their nearby hospital. The only moment they can reach the better hospital is only in cases of emergency, and it's only after obtaining special authorization, which takes time, and it's only during the day. This is not available at night.
Which is not a situation for anybody to live in as a human being.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned apartheid. Now, we'll take a little break, Elise, but let's explore, what does it mean? What is the implication of basically naming that situation as an apartheid situation? So we take a little break, but we will continue our discussion. Memang jumlah pengungsi Rohingya terus bertambah di berbagai negara. Insight akan membahasnya sesaat lagi mengenai apa yang terjadi kepada para penduduk atau masyarakat Rohingya di Myanmar. Ya, terima kasih masih bersama Insight. Kita lanjutkan pembahasan mengenai krisis Rohingya. Saya ditemani oleh Elise Tillet, anggota tim investigasi Amnesty International yang baru-baru ini telah mempublikasikan sebuah laporan mengenai apa kehidupan yang dialami oleh masyarakat Rohingya pada saat ini. Dan laporan ini luar biasa tebalnya dan penuh dengan cerita mengenai keadaan yang terjadi sekarang, khususnya di negara bagian Rakhine, dan juga ada berbagai rekomendasi yang diberikan oleh Amnesty International. Elise, you were there 4 times, part of the research team, and you also mentioned that you saw this is basically, and what is happening there is apartheid. Another apartheid is very much it's a sort of a loaded word. I mean, South Africa, they had a regime of apartheid for a long time, when the segregation and discrimination against the black. So, what are the main reasons for calling what is happening in Myanmar to the Rohingya people as apartheid?
Yeah, it's something that we don't take lightly, but when we reviewed the evidence that we had and we analyzed it against the law, it appeared clearly that what we were describing was a system of apartheid. And so, the fact speaks for themselves, and this is what we had to call it. What it means practically, apartheid is state-sponsored discrimination and segregation, that it's so severe that it creates an institutionalized and systematic regime that aims to oppress and dominate one racial group. And in this instance, that racial group is the Rohingya living in Rakhine State.
So as opposed to communal violence amongst members of tribes, or what we call the sort of horizontal conflict. So this is systematic, this is state-sponsored, and therefore it has a very serious legal and criminal and international implication, right? What do you see as the basis? What exactly is the root cause? Because we know that that it has been since for a very long time the Rohingyas has been persecuted in that area. They've been sort of, they're disenfranchised. They're basically stateless, and so on and so forth. But what is it exactly that you see as the root cause? Is it ethnic? Is it religious? Is it social, economic, or what?
Well, what we found is that the Rohingya have been segregated and discriminated against in principle because of their ethnic identity.
Ethnic identity?
Absolutely, yes.
Because they're very different from the Myanmaris, for example. They're sort of more, they call the Bengalis, they're from
well, that's
Bangladesh,
the term used by the Myanmar authorities, yes. So they've been targeted because of their ethnic identity, and this is clear in the language that the Myanmar authorities themselves are using, when they refer to them clearly as outsiders and others that do not belong to the Myanmar state. I think the root causes, you touched on it, is the state is involved in this segregation and discrimination at every level. It starts at the village administration level and it goes all the way up to Naypyidaw at the union level. And no one can say in Myanmar that they didn't know that was the consequences of these policies. It's important, however, to keep in mind that a lot of those authorities and institutions that are maintaining this system remain under the control of the Myanmar military that still has a lot of power in Myanmar.
But the Rohingyas, there are some Muslims. Now, how much does religion become sort of an important factor in all this discrimination and persecution? Because we know that that area is full of tribes. There are different types of people there, and different minority groups. But what is it that makes the Rohingyas seen as unacceptable?
Well, I cannot speak for the Myanmar authorities
myself. From your finding and from your, do ordinary Myanmaris, do they also feel, are they sympathetic towards the plight of the Rohingyas, or they don't really, it's not a big concern for them?
No, the level of prejudices and racism towards the Rohingya is really, really widespread within the Myanmar society. And what's been missing is a voice of tolerance in the country. And that's something we would hope Aung San Suu Kyi would do, which is clearly call for an end of racism, an end of the advocacy of hatred that we are saying, and a call for tolerance, and especially religious tolerance. It's not Muslims across Myanmar face restriction in the way they can practice their religion, but that's the case of other religions in the country as well. We've also met Christians in Rakhine State who needed special permission to be able to celebrate Christmas, for instance.
But is the violence still there? I mean, are there atrocities still, basically inflicted on the Rohingyas? And what sort of other things did you actually witness while you were there?
The crime of apartheid is a crime against humanity, and that's one that is being committed on a day-to-day basis, and that's still ongoing at the moment for the people who are still there. I did not witness the recent violence myself because no one has access to this area. So what's really important to know what's going on still today in those areas is giving access. And for instance, the UN established a fact-finding mission to investigate the action of the state security forces in these areas. It's really important that the international community continues to put pressure on Myanmar to give them access so that they actually can do their work and we can actually get a real understanding about what's been happening there in the past few months.
Now, you mentioned, I think the whole world hoped that a Nobel Peace Prize figure like Aung San Suu Kyi, when she basically became, in power and had a considerable influence, would change the situation there. Why do you think that didn't happen? Is it something that is also her personal belief, or is it because she was looking at, what's happening there is very much a political situation that made her sort of more, careful about doing anything about it?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that she has limited power. She has no control over the Myanmar military, and the Myanmar military
is still very much the dominant force.
Absolutely.
Despite the fact that Myanmar is supposedly moving towards democracy.
Yes. Right. They control key ministries, the entire administration of the country, so they do maintain a lot of power, and she cannot control them. So it's important to keep in mind that she's limited in terms of what she can do. But there are things that she can do and that she has not done yet. She has control in the parliament. She could start by reviewing some of these discriminatory laws that we've identified. She could ensure that development in Rakhine State benefit all communities. She could, as I said, speak
if she had the political will.
If she had the political will, and this is something that if she's still failing to show, the international community need to continue to put pressure on her to see you know, these changes take place because she has some power that she should be using.
And of course, I mean, organizations like Amnesty International wants to make the whole world aware of what is happening so that something can be done about it. And until now, this is something that the international community is still struggling and having, finding it very, very difficult to not only to solve, but to actually find out exactly what's happening and how to go on to put an end to this. We'll take a little break and we'll explore a little bit of what this report basically wants us in the international community to know more about and to do something about in Myanmar. Kita akan segera kembali. Tetaplah bersama Insight. Ya, kembali bersama Insight dan kita lanjutkan dialog mengenai krisis kemanusiaan di Rohingya. Saya ditemani oleh seorang anggota tim investigasi Amnesty International, Elise Tillet. Baru ini Amnesty International mempublikasikan sebuah laporan mengenai temuannya di negara bagian Rakhine, di mana para penduduk atau masyarakat Rohingya di sana masih sampai saat ini terus dipersekusi. Bahkan sebagian besar dari mereka terpaksa meninggalkan kampung halamannya. Elise, the main problem basically for the persecution of the Rohingya people and their plight, they have no protection whatsoever. They're seen as, I mean, it's people that nobody seems to want. They're stateless. They have no rights to anything. I mean, once you are bereft of any kind of citizenship, or you have no protection from anywhere. And you even actually mentioned that they're victims of apartheid, which is a systematic and state-sponsored discrimination towards them. Would you say that what's happening to them is actually ethnic cleansing, a form of genocide? Are we talking in that level now, not just, you know, violation against human rights?
So we did document what happened in the past 3 months, and we did call it ethnic cleansing. In legal terms, what that means, it means the forcible transfer of a population. It's crimes against humanity. This is something Amnesty has established, and this is something, you know, the term says it all. It's crimes that are so serious that they are the concern of the humanity as a whole. I think we know there's a good level of documentation that what's happening is horrific and terrific, and it requires a strong answer, not just from the Myanmar authorities, but from the world, you know, and the international community especially.
Now, what do you see has been the failure of the international community from finding a solution to this, putting a stop to this, at least from your own perspective?
Well, so far, we've just heard words of condemnation. We haven't seen any action yet, and this is where we are now. We need action, and action means using all the tools the international community has to push Myanmar to dismantle this system of apartheid and stop the violence. It also means that if Myanmar fails to hold the people responsible for these crimes to account, it must step in. We're also very concerned that the rhetoric at the moment is very much focusing on development. The international community must be certain when they provide financial assistance in Rakhine State that their money is not going to be used to further entrench that system of apartheid.
And why is it difficult, especially for international organizations such as the UN, to act on this, to actually, you know, whether it's through sanction and more than just rhetoric, as we say, to actually mobilize, to put pressure on Myanmar that this is against a crime against humanity, this cannot be tolerated, and Myanmar, as we've seen, is actually now a member of ASEAN. I mean, surely this is something that that the international community should be able to get together and do something about.
Absolutely, and the international community has been talking about preventing mass atrocities, and once again, they have not mobilized in an appropriate response to prevent mass atrocities. In this case, we've been calling, and we're not the only one, for the UN Security Council to impose an arms embargo against the Myanmar military. But the only thing we've seen from the UN Security Council so far is a statement. ASEAN...
And they haven't even taken away Aung San Suu Kyi's Nobel Peace Prize. So many people said, she doesn't deserve it, and so on and so forth. And still, like you said, the atrocities continue. Why are we, why do we fail? I mean, I know that Amnesty International, obviously, you want to make the whole world aware of what is happening. You want to make the world actually do something about it.
Well, it's not too late. I mean, it's still time to wake up to the daily reality that, the Rohingya are facing in Rakhine State. And this is what we hope to do when we present solid evidence and describe the day-to-day reality that is becoming more and more difficult for authorities in Myanmar and the international community to not react to, facts that are strongly researched and evidence. It will be more difficult, hopefully, for them now to deny the extent of the atrocities that are occurring in Rakhine State.
But so far, what has been the reaction or the feedback towards the report that Amnesty publishes? I mean, is there any sort of wow, this is outrageous, or what sort of reaction? What sort of...
Well, as we published the report, there were, the European Union and Asian meeting ongoing in Naypyidaw in Myanmar, and the statement put out by the European Union following that meeting was quite disappointing, and again, not focusing really on
what did they
violence.
say? I mean, did they actually read the report? I mean, did they really...
Well, we haven't had an official response yet, but for instance, I've been in Indonesia now for a few days, and I've been meeting with the presidential advisor and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I think they took really seriously our findings, and we really hope that now they will be able to push some of our recommendations and continue the engagements they've started with the Myanmar government to really push for the restoration of human rights.
No, unfortunately, it's still very much at the level of, rhetoric and also sort of soft diplomacy of trying to persuade now. But what is it, from your conversations, from your talking to the Rohingyas, what is it that they really, what do they want? Do they want to have a citizenship, like a Myanmari citizenship? What is it that do they want? Or is it, some kind of autonomy for their region where they can...
Well, the people I talked to, what they want is they want to be able to live in Rakhine State. They want to be able to put their children to school. They want to be able to have access to healthcare. And most
but in order
of them
to do that, they have to have some form of
citizenship. But some of them, say clearly they were considered citizens in the past, and that has been taken away from them. According to them, they are at home, and it's been for generations, and they just want to be able to live in peace at home. And most of the people we talk to, they want to live in peace with the other communities living in Rakhine State. This is something that a lot of people say. They want to go back to a life in harmony with their neighbor.
But what do they think of having to leave their homes and going to Bangladesh, for example? Are they maybe, if they can, there's a new home for them? I mean,
most of the people we talked to as Amnesty International who had fled to Bangladesh said they wanted to go home. They want to go home, but they went to...
You mean a home?
Home being Myanmar.
Being Myanmar. So that is their home, really.
Yes.
For them, that is home.
Yeah. But they want to see peace, and return must be done in safety, and it must be done in dignity. And so at a time when Bangladesh and Myanmar are discussing an agreement on the return of the refugees, it's very important to keep in mind that none of them should be pushed back towards this situation where they would face violence, or that, they're not, going back to live under a system of apartheid like it was the case before.
Which is difficult, because if it's state-sponsored, then if the government the civil government in Myanmar is still very much subservient to the military, then you know, it's going to be quite difficult to achieve, no, in the long run.
Yeah, and it's really worrying and difficult, as you say. But what we heard is the Myanmar government at the moment is planning to have a temporary location for the Rohingya who want to return.
Which is not their home, obviously.
It's not home, but also we've seen what temporary settlements have been in the past for the Rohingya in Myanmar, and they've literally been open-air prison and displacement camp that they are not allowed to leave. So this absolutely cannot happen again. And the international community knows better now. We know what happened 5 years ago. We cannot let that happen again.
Otherwise, there'll be forever internally displaced persons. I mean, it's not something that any human should live in, the sort of condition that they are facing at the moment. But what would you like to see as part of the, you know, one of the reasons, or maybe the main reasons that this report is published? What would you like to see happen in terms of solutions?
Yeah, I mean, as a first step, we would want to see the Myanmar government recognize that there is discrimination and segregation, adopt a comprehensive plan to start to dismantle that system, and it can start by reviewing some of those laws and regulations that we have documented that are discriminatory in nature against the Rohingya. We also want to make sure to see that the developments, which is very much needed in Rakhine State, is for the benefit of everybody living in Rakhine State. And we want to see the people responsible for these crimes held to account, because without that, the cycle of abuse is just going to continue. Absolutely,
but who can hold them into account if their own government says that they're not guilty? At the end of the day, I think the international community need to do much, much better when it comes to handling this situation. I think we'll take a little break, but we will continue, particularly on the sort of recommendations and future solutions for the Rohingya people in Myanmar. Insight akan kembali sesaat lagi, tetaplah bersama kami. Ya, kembali dalam Insight. Kofi Annan, Ketua Komisi PBB untuk Rakhine sekaligus mantan Sekjen PBB, mengimbau pemerintah Myanmar untuk melonggarkan pembatasan bagi warga Rohingya. Selain itu, Kofi Annan juga memberikan sejumlah rekomendasi yang diharapkan dapat menyelesaikan konflik. Nah, apakah rekomendasi ini dapat menuntaskan masalah kemanusiaan Rohingya? Kita lanjutkan perbincangan bersama tim investigasi Amnesty International, Elise Tillet dan Elise. In the report, Amnesty International also makes recommendation of what needs to be done to basically give the Rohingyas their full right as human beings, as citizens, as people who have and who should enjoy the right to live without fear, without intimidation, without discrimination. And we know that there's also a sort of like a fact-finding mission headed by Kofi Annan, and they've come up with more or less a similar recommendation. Now, my question is, I mean, if, as you mentioned, this is apartheid, it's a clear, deliberate crime against humanity and crime against basically all our sense of, you know, everybody on earth, especially now in the 21st century, should not live without the basic human rights. I mean, how could those recommendations be implemented, and who should initiate if we see that international organizations such as the UN itself seems to be politically powerless to do anything about it?
Well, you mentioned the Kofi Annan recommendation. That's something that was required by Aung San Suu Kyi herself for him to present these solutions to the situation in Rakhine State. So she should start with this. She should start with implementing the recommendation that she's asked for. Kofi Annan made it very clear when he presented his recommendation that segregation was not the solution in Rakhine State. You know, I met a teacher who really moves me when she tried to explain what it meant to live segregated. She explained to me that some of the babies who were born in 2012 are now 5 years old. They've never seen a Buddhist in their life. This is what 5 years of being cut off from the rest of Myanmar society means.
And what is holding Aung San Suu Kyi back? Especially if this is, as you said, is also her commitment to solving the problem there.
Well, clearly one of the difficulties she's going to face is that a lot of the institutions that are involved, as I said, in maintaining this system are under the control of the Myanmar military. So she's going to have to get them on board for some of those recommendations. And but there are things she can, you know, start moving on. She has legislative power again, and, you know, she can start reviewing some of these laws, especially the citizenship law, which denies, you know, citizenship to the Rohingya on the sole basis of their ethnicity.
But are you optimistic that one day the Rohingyas will have their rights fully restored to them as human beings, as citizens, as someone who should live amongst, you know, the society and not penned off in one little area?
Well, we have to be optimistic, because otherwise it means we stop supporting the Rohingya in getting their human rights back. So we cannot allow ourselves to give up. So yes, I am optimistic, and yes, Amnesty International is going to continue as long as necessary to support, you know, the restoration of their human rights. Okay,
coming back again to my first question, but then who should initiate if, for example, at the end of the day, if the military has the upper hand there? I mean, can someone, you know, can the international community actually get through, or try to get through to the military, try to maybe either through pressure or sanction or threats or...
Well, the Myanmar military...
because if you leave them to their own devices, they're not going to do anything.
Exactly. I mean, the Myanmar military has been really trying to rehabilitate their image on the international scene in the past few years, trying to show that they are a professional army that can interact with, you know, other countries in the world, and that they're not the pariah state anymore. So they want to be, you know, considered
as a member of the international family, but then they're not behaving
exactly.
like it.
So I think the international community has a strong message and leverage there that they should use, which is basically saying that as long as you're behaving the way you are, you know, you cannot have a seat with us.
But what is stopping the international community now from actually applying or implementing those sanctions? So it's a lack of political will on everybody. It's very tragic. Actually, this is something that I also interviewed the foreign minister of Indonesia, you know, trying to pressure, whether it's through persuasion and so on and so forth. But if the political will is not there and they don't feel sort of the pressure to do something, I don't see what talking.
Absolutely, it's not the time for speeches anymore. You know, it's been, the international community has had the situation in Rakhine State on their radar for the past 5 years, and it's been constantly saying we need to wait, you know, see the transition in Myanmar and see how it goes.
Now it's actually worse. Now it's actually worse now for the Rohingyas.
Exactly.
At least before they had some kind of you know, acknowledgement to their existence. Now there is nothing at all. Like, Myanmar is now part of ASEAN. I mean, just out of curiosity, what do you think that the ASEAN countries can do to prod?
Well, ASEAN, in its own charter, says that in case of a member state violating, you know, human rights, ASEAN should hold an emergency summit to discuss this situation. This is one thing that we were hoping ASEAN was going to do when such a crisis, when the fastest refugee crisis in the world was happening within ASEAN itself. What we've seen so far is that they're not even mentioned in the statements at the end of the ASEAN summit. So again, just apply your own charter. It starts there, and you know that will be that would be a step in the right direction.
Okay, what about the civil society? Because, you know, a lot of the time these days we can't really rely on the government and our leaders to do the right thing. What is Amnesty International doing with the report? Where are you taking it and who are you mobilizing it? Because perhaps the ordinary person with compassion will actually do more for the Rohingyas than any that the government can do.
Well, we've presented, we introduced the Myanmar government our findings before we released it, and we are, I have colleagues who are tomorrow flying into Myanmar to also present the detailed recommendation both to the Myanmar government and to the diplomatic community that is present in the country. I am myself here in Indonesia to present our recommendation to the government. We will, our offices around the world as well, in New York, in Brussels, Geneva, Amnesty has offices in many countries, are taking these reports to their Ministry of Foreign Affairs and, maintaining the pressure.
Are you just, crying in the dark, or do you see that people are responding positively and making the right noises?
The public and the media and Amnesty's members are responding really massively to it, and we had members writing to us asking what can we do, and I think there is a real it's very shocking for most of the people. I think where we are facing more difficulties is with the policymakers, the decision maker, and this is where all of us have a role to play. In these our governments, we can put pressure on them.
Unfortunately, there's just so many things happening in the world at the moment. It becomes sort of one of those things that's happening, and it gets forgotten about, or it gets neglected and overlooked. But the humanitarian aid that has been sort of directed towards the Rohingyas all this time, is the aid reaching them? Are they getting relief from the humanitarian aid coming their way?
But not since the 25th of August. Since the latest crisis, the Myanmar government has cut off all humanitarian organization apart from the Myanmar Red Cross to go and deliver the aid. And
so situation's actually deteriorating.
Absolutely, yeah. And people living in Rakhine State before the crisis were heavily reliant on humanitarian aid because of what I just described, the restriction they've been facing. And so if you refuse the humanitarian aid, you're making their access to food and the level of malnutrition even higher. So it's putting life at risk to deny them this humanitarian aid. And it's really important that this is being restored as a matter of urgency.
I was just thinking, because you used apartheid, and when we talk about apartheid, of course, we, historically, we saw that was the kind of regime that the South African government had imposed for a very long time. Do you see, or do you have a sense that there is this outrage or some kind of international outrage, as well as the people's outrage against what is happening in Myanmar against the Rohingyas, that actually helped bring down the apartheid system in South America? Constant pressure, constant outrage, constant reminders that it's wrong. I mean, it's is the rage there?
Well, I think the outrage had started before, even we called it apartheid, in people watching families, crossing the river to seek shelter. I think moved a lot of people, and the accounts that these people have been given have moved a lot of people around the world. What's important is to maintain the pressure, to not, forget about it, but to continue to remind our governments that no one should be left living in such a situation.
Yeah, I mean, in South Africa, they had the figure, Nelson Mandela, the champion.
Yeah.
We were hoping Aung San Suu Kyi would be the face of it, the icon of, the champion for the oppressed, but
yeah.
Anyway, you're still optimistic, Elise.
I am still optimistic.
We don't want you to go back there and then do more findings and come up in a couple of years from now and still nothing.
No, and we will, you know, and it's not just Amnesty International. There are many organizations that are also working, and you know, there are civil society organizations in Myanmar that are really working hard, you know, within interfaith groups and, you know, speaking for tolerance. They are a minority, but they are there, and they are the one taking the most risk. And I think it's very important that we all, you know, work to support them, because they are going to be the change maker within the country.
And I think also it's the responsibility of us in the media to keep the story alive and not to, you know, forget about it, because at the end of the day, it's this kind of, you know, continual pressure and raising of awareness of what's actually happening there that can hopefully find a permanent solution, good, positive solution for the Rohingya people. Elise, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ya, kita telah melihat bahwa Amnesty International melaporkan bukti yang mengungkap bahwa militer Myanmar telah membunuh ratusan orang Rohingya, memperkosa serta melakukan pembakaran desa yang dilakukan secara sengaja dan sistematis. Kekerasan dan pembakaran desa juga memaksa lebih dari 370.000 orang melarikan diri dari negara bagian Rakhine ke Bangladesh. Bukti awal ini menunjukkan bahwa serangan terhadap warga Rohingya telah dikoordinasikan secara terencana. Oleh sebab itu harus ada tekanan yang jauh lebih besar kepada pimpinan militer Myanmar untuk mengakhiri tindakan ini. Demikian My Insight kali ini. Jangan lupa saksikan kembali Insight besok. Anda dapat juga menyaksikan Insight with Desi Anwar di kanal YouTube CNN Indonesia, Insight with Desi Anwar. Sampai jumpa dan bye-bye.